Welcome to a training video of the Export Gross Pay screen in PayPak Professional 4.0. This screen is used to create data files which would then be edited and imported as gross pay entries, which is often done when creating year-to-date batches. So let's log in and show you how it works. The Export Gross Pay screen is found in the Export section of the menu, and it's beside Export Deductions and Export Taxes. We click on the button, and here's the screen. Let's start with a look at the layout of the screen, then we'll explain how it works. At top left, you have export from options. There are two options to export from. You can export from the employee gross pay, or you can export from a template. Next, we have selection options to select which employees you wish to have included in this data file. You have options for the format of the file. At the top right, you have a cluster of totals. Under these, you have four panels. There's a panel for the employees, which you can select from. There's a panel of job types. There's a panel of pay rates. And there's an export columns panel. The first three panels, the employees, the job types, and the pay rates, are used only if you have selected employee gross pay to export from employee gross pay. Under the four panels, there is a grid for the template, and this option is used only when you have ticked the template option. The fourth panel has export columns, and these apply to both the options for employee gross pay and the template. So these three are together. This is by itself, and this applies to both of them. At the bottom of the screen, there is a variety of buttons which control various functions for this screen. So let's get started by explaining why you would want to use this screen and how it works. The main reason why someone would export gross pay from PayPak is for year-to-date batches. That's one of the main reasons. There are two main reasons. One main reason is to get year-to-date batches. So you want gross pay entries for year-to-date batches. You may have had purchased PayPak, say in June of 2021, the current year, and you've entered some batches for June. You've entered a couple of batches for the month so far, but you do not have correct year-to-date information on your pay slips because you only have the 2 weeks entered so far for June. You need to get the totals from January to May in your payroll because your business did not start in June. It was operational before then. So you may have a case where you have batches for the current year which you wish to import, and this will do the gross pay for them. The export taxes will do the taxes, and the export deductions will do the deductions if you require that. And you may need this information for not only to show the year-to-date on the current year's pay slip, but maybe also for tax reporting purposes. when you file tax returns. Also, for purposes of severance pay calculation, you may want your year-to-date totals. You may need year-to-date batches created. And in the case of severance, you may want to enter, suppose your business was operational for, like, say, from 2019. If you only started from June of 2020 with PayPak, you want the year for 2019, that year's information. You want the year's information for 2020, and you want from January to May of 2021. Depending on your requirements, you could enter those totals as totals for each one lump total for each year. They could also be entered as lump totals for each particular month if necessary. So you can have, maybe you have weekly paid employees. They're paid 4 or 5 times every month, but you have monthly totals for them, and you could enter the monthly totals either. You can enter the monthly totals for each employee for 2019 going forward. You can put them in a gross pay file and enter them, or you could enter in 2019 if necessary as just the entire totals for the year. As I said, depending on what your needs are and what you need to do. There was a time when the tax returns for Barbados were done at the end of the year, and customers would often go back and they would enter, say, in this case, the example I gave, they would enter from January to May as one lump total, and then at the end of the year, they could do the full tax return for 2021. That has since changed in the case of Barbados, and the reports are now submitted on a monthly basis. So if that was the case, you would have to enter totals for January, February, March, April, May, and May separately, but that it's still less work than having to re-enter the batches, re-enter for a weekly batch for each week of the year that had passed so far. So that's one use of the export gross pay screen, to prepare an import file which you will then use for entering year-to-date batch information. And as I said, it could be for gross pay, taxes, and deductions. There are 3 separate screens which can generate those files. The other option in the case of the gross pay would be if you have a special type of payment which you wish to pay your employees. Let's say that they did some type of extra work, or they were to be paid some type of payment for a period. Maybe you have a time clock and it imports the times, it sends the information in a file to you, and for some reason the time clock wasn't working that week and you need to key the hours in manually. They could be keyed in as you edit the batch, but if there are lots of them, you have them in a spreadsheet somewhere, you can easily generate a spreadsheet with just regular overtime and double time, or whatever it is, whatever is required, and import the entries for that week's payroll using a spreadsheet or a CSV file or a tab delimited file, right? If there was a type of pay that was not in the employee profile, you had your employees set up regular overtime, double time, but there was some type of back pay, and you did not have a pay rate set up for back pay. If that was the case and your batch was already prepared, and you needed to edit the batch to enter this back pay, manually you'd have to go to each employee and add the line in their gross pay, put in the amount, put in the rate, save the entry, and repeat that for each employee. If you have a large number of employees, that could be quite time consuming. If you have a small number of employees, maybe you don't mind. If you have 5-6 employees, it may not be so tedious. But what if you have 50 employees, 80 employees, 100, 200? We have customers that have up to 900 employees, some even more than that. Some have more than 1,000 employees. So where you have a large number of employees and time is short, you can create an export file based on either the employee's gross pay or using a template where you specify which pay rates you wish to select, and it generates the file, you edit it, you import it. Quick and easy, just like that. Now, when you are dealing with year-to-date batches, you want to use this feature to import year-to-date batches. You probably will want to use the employee gross pay and choose the options here. If this is a one-off payment, on the other hand, where you're editing entries for a batch or importing, like I said, the back pay or something of that sort, you could then use the template. You can also use a combination of the two. It's quite possible to have this ticked and this ticked. It will generate a file that's a combination of what's in the employee profiles plus what is in the templates. For the purpose of this demo, we are going to create one file for the gross pay, which comes from the employee gross pay, and one file using the template. So let's start with the employee gross pay one. We tick employee gross pay. The options next to that is for selection of employees. You can select all the employees. They're listed here right now. There are 44 employees in total. You can choose by category, in which case I come here and I pick a category. So if I choose admin, there's 3 employees in the admin. Under cooks, we've got 10 cooks. Under kitchen assistants, we don't have any of them. We go to chefs, no chefs. We've got 12 delivery folks there. So if you wanted to zero in on a particular category of workers, that's how you would do it. You can also choose by department, and I have 2 departments here. I've got Oistins, which is 24 employees, and I've got Water Terrace, which is 20 employees. So again, depending on what you need to, who you need to process these entries for, you can use the option here to select. You've also got an option by payroll set, and I have a number of payroll sets in here for which I can generate the information for these employees. Now I'm going to use the year-to-date test, which is a payroll set which I created specially for this demo. So the next option is the format, and there are 4 options for the format. You can select a Excel 2007 file, an Excel 2003, comma separated, or tab delimited. And for this demo, I will create one of each of these. When you're doing it in real life, you'll probably only use one. You only need one. And we recommend the Excel option. That's the easiest one to work with if you are editing information, if you have information to edit. The Excel ones are easy to read. The comma separated and the tab delimited are not the easiest human readable format, but if you have tools that could edit them and save them back in that format, that's fine. You can use them too if you see fit. So we're going to use Excel 2007 as our first option. There's a checkbox here which decides whether you wish to add data headers. If the spreadsheet should have a data column at the top, or the text files. Now it's very important to note that when you export this file, you're going to edit it and then import it. And therefore, the options which you choose when you export should match the options when you import. You can't export it as Excel and import it as CSV. You can't export it with some of these options here. Also, likewise, this for this column here, the export columns, and we'll get to that shortly. There are certain options in here which when you select them, you have to select or match those options back when you are importing the file. There is a separate training video for importing gross pay. It's called Import Gross Pay, just as there is this video for Export Gross Pay. Likewise, there is a training video for import taxes, just as there's one for export taxes, and there's one for import deductions, just as one for export deductions. So continuing, we've got our option for the data header, and we've got our Excel format. These are the totals. These three grids here, there's employees, there's job types, there's pay rates. And in each one, you may turn on or off the entries you want. You can turn on or off employees, you can turn on or off job types, you can turn on or off pay rates, and the ones that are excluded will not be included in the file. For these three panels, there is these three buttons here. Now these three buttons work with all the three different ones. The grid which you select, the grid which you've last selected is marked with an asterisk. You'll notice I move from them. It's now on employees, it's now on job types, it's now on pay rates. When it's on pay rates, if I click none, it turns everything off. If I click all, it turns everything off. And if I had ticked a few of these and I click invert, it inverts for the pay rates. So I'll turn everything back on there. Likewise, for the job types, if I'm on the job types, so the asterisk is here, these buttons are now set to work for the job types. So I can invert them. I can say none. I can say all. Same thing for the employees now. Click on employees, it has the focus. I can invert. I can say none. I can say all. So that's how this particular screen works. These three panels and the three selection buttons at the bottom. Now, for the purpose of the gross pay, I am going to export all of the pay rates which the employees have. Right, this is what it will do. It will export all the ones, not necessarily everyone that is ticked, but everyone which is in the employee gross pay profile. So if an employee does not have, say, salary, or does not have hazard pay in their, if they don't have hazard pay in their employee profile, you will not see hazard pay selected when the file is created. The export columns control what goes into the file that you're going to export, the data file. Now, the columns will always be created. Okay? They will always be created. There are some columns that you cannot exclude. You can't exclude the employee ID, you cannot exclude the employee number or the name. You can turn off the job type, however. When you turn that off, the column is still there, but it does not export the job type code from the employee profile. It leaves that field blank. And that's often used where you do not need it, because it could be that you want to change it to a different job type, or it could be that you don't need it. You're not using it when you import the file. You maybe most often people will match using the pay rate ID. So you may want the pay rate ID and the pay rate description. Reference could be left blank. The field will be there, but the column will be left blank. Quantity and rate. You may or may not want these sent over. Now, the way PayPak works when you import the file is that it can match more often than not. You are pulling the rate from the employee's profile. So many import files do not have the rate. Okay. However, if you were preparing a batch for year-to-date batches, you're doing a year-to-date batch, that year-to-date batch would contain a quantity, which is the year-to-date total, maybe, and also a year-to-date amount, which you would put in as the rate. And in that case, you're importing the rate. Again, because you're filling that in, you do not need the rate which comes from the employee profile. Depends on how you're using it. You could be using it as a year-to-date batch, or you could be using it for a one-off single batch. If you're using it for a regular batch, you may or may not want the rate depending on your batch import settings when you're importing the gross pay. In this case, I'm going to turn these ones off, both the quantity and the rate. They'll be there, but there'll be nothing in them. The taxable is the option for whether the line of gross pay is a taxable line or not. You may have some allowances, you may have some types of pay or entries on the person's pay which are not taxable, and this option will select whatever is in the employee profile, however the lines are configured, as well as the type. The type will indicate whether the entries are standard pay, benefits, or service charge. So that's the option for the employee gross pay. And if I wanted to, I could hit the settings button to save those settings. I'm going to export the 4 files now for the employee gross pay. First is the Excel 2007. So I click on export. This is my import gross pay folder. There's a file in there already. Normally the file name is just gross pay, so I'm going to say employee because I'm creating 2. I want to be able to identify the ones which are from the employee gross pay from the ones which are the template. So I save that. And it's done. Then we go for the Excel 2003. I save that. Put the word employee in front of it. Save that. And that's finished. Then we go for the comma separated CSV. Export that. Employee in front of it. We save that. And finally the tab delimited. Export. And we save that. Of course, when you are using this, you would be choosing the option which matches your settings in for your import gross pay. So you wouldn't have to choose all 4 formats. You'd only be choosing one. I'm choosing the 4 for the purposes of this demo only. Now that was the employee gross pay. Let's do the template now, the template option. And for the template option, we have the template here. Now just go back a moment and check that folder. Yes, those are my files. I've created them there the 12th of June. These are the 4 which I chose, which I just created. They have employee gross pay in front of each of them. We're going to do the template ones now. So for template, let's go with the Excel format first of all. But we have to put some lines in the template. When you are doing a template, you're typically choosing a set of pay rate lines, of gross pay lines, a specific set. You don't want everything that's in the employee profile. You want a specific set of pay rates. So if there was a new pay rate which was created and it was not in the employee gross pay, you can add it in the template, or you could also choose an existing one. Let me add we said back pay. So let's create a pay rate called back pay. It wasn't there before. And let's just save it. That's all we need. And we come back to our screen here. I'll just hit the refresh button. That should give us what we need here. So I set out the template. Oops. This is going to be bonus payroll set. I want the year-to-date payroll set. Okay, so our template, the type is standard pay. We're not going to use a job type, okay, for these 4 employees. I happen to know that they're cooks, so I could have chosen that job type, but we'll just say none. That leaves the field blank. For the pay rate, there's our back pay, okay. Well, let's make this one for regular. I will put in the back pay, but let's put the regular in. Then we add another line for overtime, and we add another line for double time, and then we want the back pay as the 4th line. So what this would do is, with this template, and I could put a reference here as well. Let's say January to July 2019. So that's back pay from January to June to July of 2019. What this will do, the template, is for each of these 4 employees, it will add these 4 lines. So you end up with 16 lines for each of these employees, as opposed to the gross pay option, which would have in it whatever's in their particular employee profiles. And if I had removed some of these, because I could have also, when I did the gross pay, I could have turned off some of these. I could have come here, I could have said none, and if I was doing the gross pay, I could have chosen regular, overtime, and double time, and then back pay. But then I would not be able to easily get it in the order that I wish, because you can sort the columns, but when it creates the file, it will be created in a particular manner. Now this has regular, overtime, and has the back pay at the bottom there. I think I sorted it in descending order. No, that's by description. But let me just go back and just say all to that and reset that. We're not using the template in this case, the gross pay in this case, we're using the template. So we're ready to export the template. We have our options set. We have the lines configured. We got a reference in there. If I want that reference to appear in the file, I'd have to tick it. If this is turned off, the reference would not appear. But when I turn it on, the reference would appear in the file. So let's export our 4 files. We'll go to export, and this one is template gross pay, TEMPLATE. And we save that. And it's finished. Then we go to the Excel 2003, and we export that one. Template gross pay, and save that one. Then we go to comma separated CSV, and we export that one. Put the name in and we save it. And finally, the tab separated export template, and it is saved. So we have 4 template files and 4 gross pay files. So these are the 4 employee ones that came from the employee gross pay. Sorry, these 4 here. And underneath it, these are the 4 template ones. So let's show you the difference between the files. First of all, let's look at the 4 let's look at the template ones, which were the gross pay. Let's look at the gross pay ones, which are the ones we first did. Here's the Excel 2007 format. And as you can see, you have the employee ID, employee number, employee name, etc., etc. You have all the lines of their gross pay. And there are 32 lines. There are 4 employees. They have 8 lines of gross pay each. In this particular case, if someone only had 3 lines, if your handout only had 3 lines, you'd only have 28 lines. These other lines would not be in there for him, because this is what comes, as I said, from the employee gross pay. Now, if we look at the template gross pay, in comparison, you've only got 16 lines, because those are the specific lines that we wanted to look at. So you can compare the two here. You see that with the employee gross pay, we have more lines. With the template, we have less lines. We have only specific lines that we want. And there you can see the back pay entry, and the reference is included. What you would then do with this file is you would come in here and edit the information in here to enter the quantity. So if there was 40 regular hours, the person worked 8.5 overtime, they didn't have any double time, their back pay was, say, $1,725, you'd enter a 1 here and a 1725 there. Okay, let's just widen that. So that's how that would work. These would stay as they are. The next person, you could enter 40 regular hours, 5.5 overtime, and 6 double time, right? And you would enter again 1 here and 1800 there. So this is where if you're entering information for an individual period. Let's say this person got back pay and they got 1878.36, and this person is 1900.36. Again, the quantity of 1, the hours, 32 hours, 8 and 5.9. So 40 hours here, 25 hours there, etc. So each person would have some entries. You would then save this file, and it can then be imported into PayPak using the import gross pay screen. On the other side, we have the gross pay spreadsheet, similar layout, and you could have entered the same information in here as well. The difference is that when you use the template, when you use the employee gross pay, it may bring up lines that you don't need. The template is more precise. It's only the specific ones you need. The gross pay may be more useful if you are doing a year-to-date total. Now, if this was a year-to-date batch, what you could do is you would be entering the gross pay like this. You'd put a 1 in here, you want a rate, and if that person worked for $45,239.62, that is how that will be entered for gross pay. You come in here, you can make the totals 1, and the rate would be the total of whatever they've worked for the year-to-date period. Okay, and if they had triple time, so everything in this case would be like a 1. If there's something they did not have, you could leave it at 0. 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, That's how that would work. You just fill this out accordingly, and the total you enter here is the employee's year-to-date total for that particular type of pay. You need to split it for the gross pay so that when you come to do your tax reporting, you can place the type of pay under the particular section, say for the income tax reports, your VAT, your TAMIS reports, or your income tax, whatever is required. So that's how this would work. You just fill the totals out, and that's it. Now, as I said, the export format, the format that's most easily used is, excuse me, I want to save that, sorry. The format which is most widely used would be Excel. Excel spreadsheet is easy to use. I'm using it here using LibreOffice. I could also use OpenOffice. They're free. Just to show you the flexibility of it. We have some other files though. Let's look at the other file formats and show you what they look like. You may also not want to use them. This is the CSV format where the records are separated by commas. Now to edit this, you'd have to come in here and put your quantity in this column, in this part here, and the rate here. This is not easy to use, easily human readable format. The CSV or the TXT. This is the TXT. Okay? And these formats are more for machines or programs sometimes, and there may be some customers who may have because you can actually import these in Excel as well, edit them and save them back in the CSV format or the TXT format. Be aware, however, that Excel will often take numbers or figures or bits of information where there's a lead-in 0 and strip the lead-in 0. So if you have a reference or an account number information in any of these columns, especially if you're dealing with the deductions which have an account numbers, maybe bank account numbers, be careful with that. Excel can strip lead-in zeros from information, treating them as numbers, and then when you import it back into PayPak, you do not get the correct information you're looking for, which is why customers will often use the CSV or the TXT format. So those are the formats there. So let me close this. And I believe that brings this demo to a close. The only other thing which I think we've covered everything here. I don't think we've missed anything. We've looked at the gross pay format and the template format. The only other thing I would add is that you can combine the gross pay with the template. So if I wanted the gross pay lines plus the back pay, I could come to the template and remove these, and this would give me a file which contains both the selected gross pay, the gross pay information, and in this case one line for the template. It combines everything together. So there you have it. We have the options we're exporting from, the employee gross pay or the template, the selection for which employees you're selecting. In this case, we selected from a payroll set. The formats, the 4 formats, the option to add a data header, the totals at the top of the screen, the 3 panels for employees, remember the asterisks, the job types, and the pay rates. And here we have the export columns, where you can choose which columns will have data in them and which ones will be empty. At the bottom of the screen, there is the template grid where you can create a manual set of templates. So that's it for this video. Thank you for the time you spent with us. It's always been a pleasure, and do look out for the other videos, the related videos on export deductions, export taxes. There is also import gross pay, import deductions, and import taxes, and there will be a video on creating year-to-date batches, which I recommend that you have a look at each of those as well. So thank you and goodbye until the next video.